to come in. Time to study one. First word, family.
Family. F-A-I-N.
Little time. Try again.
Family. F-A-M-I-L-Y. Family.
Good job.
I'm dying to believe that you're out.
1. Your word is foster. Foster. To care for or cherish. To raise, as in foster a child. Foster.
Foster. F-O-S-T-E-R.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect foster parent. There are plenty of teenagers willing to put up with you. Open your heart and your home to a foster child today. Your love and support will make all the difference in their world. For more information on how you can foster a child, please visit the Department of Human Services in your area. Call 227-2057 or 227-7451. Email us at giveyourheart@humandev.gov.bz or visit our website at humandevelopment.gov.bz.
And welcome back, and what better introduction to this segment than that video there. But joining us on set to tell us more about the Give Your Heart to a Child campaign, we have Eischell Alamilla, who is a foster care recruiter, and we have Leanne Arthurs, who is the director of the Department of Human Services. Good morning and welcome, and thank you for being here.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having us. Morning, Belize.
Talk to us about the Give Your Heart to a Child campaign. What does this entail, and how can Belizeans become actively involved in this campaign?
Yes, our Give Your Heart to a Child campaign is actually a relaunching of an original campaign that began back in 1996. And so that's why this one we have the tagline, Give Your Heart to a Child too. And so what we wanted to do was play with the concept of two. And we wanted to recognize the families who have responded to our previous campaigns and have actually opened their homes to care for children who are in need of protection. And then we also thought that, you know, we want to kind of play to the Belizean public that you too can also give your heart to a child. And so that's why we changed the tagline to Give Your Heart to a Child too, to show that we're re-energizing the campaign and bringing it back. Through the years, we've tried different strategies in terms of being creative of how to appeal to the public to partner with us. Through the years, we've had like Go a Mile for a Child. I think Marlene might remember the Go for a Mile campaign, where we actually had people marching through the city of Belize City with banners encouraging people to foster or to adopt. We had various like fun days in different parks where we tried to bring the community out in terms of engagement. And so basically the core of the program is to encourage individuals and families to open their homes, open their hearts, and to foster or adopt a child that's in the child protection system, who have been going through difficult circumstances because of abuse, neglect, exploitation.
Give us some insight as to how open Belizeans already are about foster care and adoption, because it almost seems, because we don't talk about it so much in Belize, like a foreign concept. You know, we hear about foster care in the States, we know people who are looking for adoption from other parts of the world, but what is it like here in Belize?
Yeah, what we found through the previous campaigns was a lot of interest in babies. And you heard families say that they feel it's a bit easier to raise a baby from a young child into adulthood. But what we're promoting through the Give Your Heart to a Child campaign too is really an emphasis on our foster care program and an emphasis on the more difficult to place children, which are teenagers or siblings who want to stay together and special needs children. Right now we have more or less 90 families that are partnering with us and provide these services, but we want to increase that. The National Plan of Action for Children that has previously or just about closed had a goal that we would have 90% of children who come into the system in non-institutional care. And so that's our platform goal. We're not there. We're about 37% of children in foster home, and the remaining are in residential care facilities. And so we're hoping that through this campaign we can flip that switch and increase children in family placements.
Now it seems like it should be a rhetorical question, but why is it better for the children? What do studies show if a child is placed in a foster care family versus being in an institution?
Yeah, definitely children do and thrive better within a familial environment. Think about your own situations and the ability to have one-on-one connection with your parents and with your siblings. And imagine a scenario of 60 plus children and 3 or 4 caregivers, and how much competition it will be to vie for certain attention.
Yeah.
All of us as humans have an innate need for contact. We have a need for connection. We have an innate need for attention. And even our partners in our education system will tell you that when children don't get certain attention, they will compete for that attention through misbehaviors. And so you have increased conflict, you have increased behavioral acting out, and not able to really focus in on the trauma that these children have been going through. And so the risk is that children become lost in the system. And so a family environment takes the child into a more closer connection to be able to see what's going on, what have you been through, and how can we help you towards the healing process.
Do you find that there is a challenge when trying to get parents to be able to take on some of these individuals who may be at the teenage level and are going through their own physiological and their own coming of age changes and what have you, that they're more apprehensive towards taking on these kids?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we have been making some observations in terms of the children coming into care. And I mean, we have children all ages that come into care, from 0 right up to 18. And we actually have a group of children that are 18 plus that are special needs children. But developmentally, they're not 18 and able to function as an adult. So we're also recruiting for those category of young persons as well. But what we find is that a lot of times we tend to neglect the formative years, and we still to an extent have that philosophy of children should be seen and not heard. And so when our children begin to go through the developmental stage of the teenage years, you know, that rebellion tends to want to show its foot, and it's really the child coming into their identity. So they will more test you to be able to see who they are, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And a lot of parents don't know how to manage that. And so because they lack understanding that some of this is normal, and this is the opportunity to engage that child, to kind of listen to that child, hear where they are. Parents view it as disrespect. You're too disrespectful, you know, not talk to me like that, you know, things like that. And so it ends up in physical confrontations. And what sometimes happens is that children, through their rebellion, like go off with boyfriend against parents' back, and then parents become helpless of how do I respond to that. And unfortunately some parents respond very violently, and then want to place their children in institutions.
So it's interesting because you point out all these behaviors, which is part of the development of children as they progress to adulthood, although we tend to want to forget our own experiences. But what is the type of support? The campaign is made up of such that you are trying to get people to open their homes and their heart for short-term care and long-term care. So there's a family of children, or maybe one child who needs to go into a home, and you want people to say, I'll take them. But of course, if I've never had a teen before, and I can barely remember my teenage years and what my thought process is like, what is the support mechanisms that's in place? Are you, as a foster parent, left with the full responsibility, or are you, does the Department of Human Services offer supplementary programs for them?
Well, one of the things we do realize, like you said, that it is a responsibility that you're agreeing to take on. And so through the screening process, we do want to look for mature individuals who have kind of come into themselves in terms of where they are as individuals, and understanding the ability to give back. And so first of all, that you have enough space in your heart to understand that these children, first of all, need love, and you're able to give that. You're able to be present with a child, and to be able to listen to that child and understand where that child is. And so through the screening process, that's the first level of assessment that the social worker will do, to look at what are your capacities for care. Based on that, we would then look at your strengths and areas maybe where you need certain levels of support. And then we kind of tailor a plan of how can we help you with that support. Right now, we don't have the structured training programs. It's done more on an individual basis. Between the person who does the study and the foster parents. But eventually, we want to look at how do we structure training, especially based on commonalities of issues that are coming out. The challenge with training in the past is often people's schedules, you know, and how do you pull them within the same space. But when we did do it, we found that especially the issues of grief and loss, that they really appreciated that. Because one of the challenges for foster parents is this child comes and stays for a temporary period of time, and then the child leaves. And so the whole separation and loss that comes with that. And we try to tell our foster parents that when children attach, that's a good thing.
How do you allow yourself to get attached knowing that you have to detach?
Yes, but it's a good thing. First thing we want to start with that children that can attach is a good sign. Children that can't attach is when we get worried. Because then those children end up being the children that will start fires, children that seem to have no conscience and no sense of remorse. And so that worries us. And so the first training is that, you know, and trying to help them navigate of what's normal and what's normal.
And how about looking at how connected to the system the child still is? I ask this because children aren't removed from their homes for small reasons. They're usually major issues that have taken place that a child is removed by the Department of Human Services and placed in care with someone else. So there are substantial issues that have to be dealt with. Is the child still in care, perhaps getting some kind of work with a social worker at the same time while they're in foster care?
You want to talk a little bit about that?
While the child is in foster care, the department works holistically with the family. So they'd be getting counseling, parenting classes. They'd be going to the courts to make sure that you know, that they're settling their case. On that, while they're doing that, the child is also getting counseling. We're also working with them to make sure that, you know, their needs are being met. So we work with the family as a whole to make sure that the child can go back home if the family stabilizes itself, that child can go back home and be safe and doesn't have to come back into care.
Talk to us a bit about the recruiting process. I know there's a call for individuals and families to offer their homes and themselves to these kids. What has that process been like?
We've been doing presentations at churches. We have been invited to different groups and organizations to do these presentations. But for our campaign now, we're being more, we've developed more of a
media package.
Media package. We'd be at the parks. We'll have our booths there. We have
a full campaign.
Yes, a full campaign in each district. So you could look forward to seeing us in the parks.
Once you see some red and pink and orange balloons, you know, they're stopping at the booths and come and find out more. And that's what we really want to appeal to people through the recruitment campaign, that, you know, if you're hearing us and there's something tugging at your heart, you know, that's a call on you to respond. And that's why the tagline for our campaign is also, you are the difference. And we want to let people know that you are. You know, you might hear stories of children, you might even see the crime escalating in the city, you know, and all of these have roots. And some of these same children in our care who have gone through difficult circumstances are the very children that need somebody to be there for them and be the difference in their life. And as a community, we have to come together in order to work with these children.
You know, we hear some of the most heartbreaking stories about children, and heartbreaking the challenges that they have to go through. And I know we get quite a bit of response from the public anytime there's a story about a child. And I think a lot of people want to help. But as you pointed out, people may be listening to this segment and say, man, maybe I can take a child into my home until they're back where they need to be, if I know it's temporary, it's foster care. But I don't know if I'll qualify. So what are the requirements? What are you looking for in foster parents? And how do you ensure that the temporary home is safer than the home that they're coming out of?
So we have a home study that we do with the family.
Okay.
It's a comprehensive interview. We go into the home and do a home assessment so that we see that the family has space and that they are free of hazards. We also want them to bring in their police report, their medical certificates, copy of their social security card, so that we could do our own database check to see that these families are equipped and safe to have our children with them.
So you do a thorough check of the families themselves.
Yes,
What
we
type
do.
of families are you looking for? Does it matter if you already have kids, don't have kids, single mom, single dad?
Yeah.
We're very non-traditional families now.
Yeah.
We're looking for all families
All
who
forms.
have an open heart and have the time and the willingness to take care of these children for us.
Okay. So even if you're working parents, as long as you can provide a safe
Home.
environment for the child, you can take them in.
Right.
You're also looking, and I know this one to be a bit of a challenge, you try not to separate siblings.
Yes.
Which means if there's a group of siblings removed from a home, you try to place them
Get
all
together.
together. How difficult is it to find homes for?
It is difficult. We've had a few success cases. A lot of them has been our partners internationally who has done international adoption with a lot of our siblings. But I think the dimensions there, of course, families have to factor the financial situation to look at, do they have existing children? Because you can end up with a little group home yourself, no?
Yeah.
But we do have families that have the financial capacity, have the heart and the willingness to have a large family.
Yeah.
And they have come in to take in multiple children, no? When we look at siblings, we do, like you said, try to keep them together. And where we can't, then we would separate them. But our plea is that we want to keep them together. They want to stay together. And so for you to consider that as well.
Just a point of curiosity here, and not to necessarily either dwell on any negative aspect of what's taking place. Have you guys, through these particular initiatives, been faced with situations where the children complain of either some of the families or the environment that they're
isn't
placed
fitting,
in?
A small percentage, no?
Yeah.
Less than, what, 1%, maybe? We haven't had a lot of reports of neglect by foster parents. I can't recall. If we do, we will investigate
The
it.
challenges usually is that, getting used to each other, personalities, and being now in a structured home rather than, coming from a family that might have not had that stability or rules in place or all that stuff. So that's more of the complaints that we get, that, there's too many rules here.
And so a lot of that you have to address with
Yeah.
mediation between the
So it's
foster
just
family
working.
to prepare both child and family for a new relationship. And we all know that relationship building can be difficult even for us as adults.
Yeah.
And so we have to recognize that as well.
So only 30% of your children in your care are in foster families. So I'd say we're in urgent need of foster
Urgent
families.
need, yes.
And when you say short-term care, what's the time frame we're talking about?
We're
We could
looking.
maybe talk about the different categories,
Yeah.
emergency.
Yeah.
We have emergency care that's up to 3 weeks, and we usually
3 months.
3 months. We usually have our younger children who would just need, like babies who come in just for the overnight or for a short period of time before we could place them
With another
with another family. We have short term where we know that the family would get on their feet quickly, and we could foresee that these children can be placed back home within a short period of time. And then we have long term that goes on to 3 years, that these children can stay with this family while the or family of origin is being worked with and cared for. And then we have our adoption, which is permanent. After you adopt a child, it's, like I said, permanent, and so that becomes your own child, equivalent to your biological child.
Yeah. What happens is, in the system, every child that comes in develops what we call a permanent plan. And a permanent plan can be reunification to their biological family.
Which is always originally the goal,
That's
right?
what we want. We have a hierarchy that we operate from. First is when the child protection workers go in, how can we keep this child at home? So that's the first thing that they will attempt to do. What are the capacities, the strengths, the support systems around the biological family? And how can we as a department support them to function? The goal after that, if we realize that, and the determinant by law is that a child has suffered harm or the child is likely to suffer further harm. So the social workers have to do what's called a safety and risk assessment to determine that. And if it's determined that it's not safe, at least not for now, until certain things are put in place, we have to remove. And then we look at and want to work with the biological family. What are your resources in your family? Do you have an aunt? Do you have grandparents, godmothers, godfathers who can help? And we would then assess them first, so relative placement. And then we then go to foster homes, family. We want to place with family, and then last resort should be an institution. So to go back to permanency planning, we have permanency plans of reunification with biological family or wherever the child was. Then we have family unification. So maybe we might have a scenario of a parent who has some intellectual disability or mental illness that they can never on their own parent the child to the level that the child needs. So if you replace with them, the child will come back into the system repeatedly because of the risk factors with her mental illness. So what we want to look for is a family that can take that child, but maybe that mother still have access and still has contact with their child. So we call that family unification. So the child will be safe in an alternative placement, but still has access to their biological parents. And then after that, we look at adoption, and we also have semi-independent and independent living. Now, what we're facing right now is a lot of our children are looking to age out of the system. So from they turn 15, we begin to look at a kind of independent living plan. How can we begin to prepare them with the life skills to cope with transitioning into adulthood? So this is another category of children that we're appealing to the public to help us. You know, even if you're saying, I can't fully take on these children full time, we also have the Respite Program, which is, I'm willing to commit to a child for weekends, for holidays, or even to be a sort of mentor to that child, and so that the child has some connection outside of the institution, so that even when they become an adult, it's like you have some place to go have Sunday dinner. You have some place that when your boss stress you out, you could go vent. We want these kids to have connection with somebody. And if you're saying, you know, I think I can do that, we would want you to apply as well.
I mean, so because technically once they pass 18, they don't need to stay in your care.
Well, legally, once they're in school, we will help them up to age 21 while we help them to transition. So it's not like you turn 18 and we say, we're no longer responsible, handle your candle.
So you transition. I mean, no, and it's when I think about it, you know, at 19, if I'm not in school and I have to enter the workforce and you have nowhere, no family to turn to, that's very difficult.
Yes, it's scary. And that's what we're finding, that some of them are very scared and they're like, what's going to happen to me? And then we've actually hired an independent living officer to support the social workers in developing the independent living plans to kind of help with, you know, helping children to transition.
I think there's been a shift in our society and our tradition of raising kids to where if you look at the past several decades, kids were more equipped to take on the world at a younger age, so that you find that they were leaving home when they were 16, 17, and they were able to fend for themselves. But today, you find that more kids are, I wouldn't say clingy, but they're closer to home in terms of learning and in terms of development and maturity to be able to then take on the world at an older age. Do you find that that is a real issue in terms of allowing these kids to move on once they're 19, 21, etc.?
You want to talk about that?
Go ahead.
I think it's mixed. We have some of them who tell us you know, I have one more year, guys, and I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And they love the idea of freedom.
Yeah.
And sometimes
they do.
They don't understand what freedom means and the responsibility. And if you talk to us as adults, how many of us wish we could go back to having mom pay all the bills? And so it's teaching them to not take things for granted. And that's been sometimes the feedback we've gotten from community is that what are we teaching our children? And are we really preparing them for the world to not take the opportunities they have right now, even being in care, as an opportunity, and not take it for granted? Because we don't want to foster an entitlement, but we want them to realize and not forget where they came from, and then set goals for where they want to go. And so it's a difficult balancing act, and that's why we want the community to even help us with that mentorship. Because to me, when you connect with somebody, it's like discipline and parenting. You know, if you're just disciplining a child and just giving consequences, and that child doesn't feel any love, that child's going to rebel. But when that child knows you love them and you want what's best for them, that child tends to respond to you, because you realize that you're not trying to hurt them. That what you're telling them in terms of real life is actually to benefit them. Did you notice that picture, Marlene?
I didn't see it just now.
I wanted to say, guess who?
Oh my gosh. So yes, and I'll be a part of this campaign as well.
Yeah, so when Marlene was a wonderful child at Holy Redeemer, she was our guest at our Go a Mile for a Child campaign back in 1997.
I have a long history with the Department of Human Services. That is a throwback. I was a very active child, and you know, I think it was important to me then, and it still is important now. When you think, and it's very simple. If you play the scenario in your mind of a child waking up and not having what we had as just, I mean, I grew up in a single parent household. I had my mom and my sisters, and imagining a child not having that experience is something that I think any human being, there's a reaction. So for those who can, it is the time for them to sign up and do something about it.
And that's why we talk about, you know, there's a thing called emotional intelligence and being aware of who you are and how you can give back. And so we want people to be able, like I said earlier, to not only provide the physical. These kids need more than physical stuff. They need more than a nice house. They need people who are willing to connect to them on an emotional, spiritual level and to connect and bond with them.
Now, Eischell, I want you to talk very quickly because we're running out of time. I'm sure in your recruitment process, you have to allay all the fears of the people who call and say, I'm interested, but I work long hours, but I don't know if I can discipline.
I don't know what to expect.
I don't know if my kids will like them. I don't know if they'll like me.
What
do you tell them?
To them is to give it a chance. If you have that love in your heart, if you feel that you can give a child support and love and care, to take the chance and you know, have that child come into your home. That child can benefit a lot from you, and your family benefits from that child. Imagine the teaching, the lesson that your children get from showing empathy to somebody else, showing compassion, showing your children how to care for other people. It's such a learning experience for your own family, and so it's a beneficial process for both sides. It's not only for the child gaining, but your family also gains so much from it. So give your heart to a child and be the difference to these children who are looking for love from you.
How do people apply?
Yeah, well, there's different ways. We've reorganized our website. So just go to the humandevelopment.com website, and you can either click on the little logo that says Give Your Heart to a Child, and it'll take you to a page that will have you fill out a short little form, and then a social worker will then contact you for an interview.
So you could also send us an email at giveyourheart@humandev.gov.bc.
And you can also go into our offices countrywide in order to apply as well.
All right. Well, you officially launched a campaign tomorrow. On Valentine's Day.
Yes.
So
we've always thought it's synonymous with love and hearts.
It is about love. It is about love. And so people who have been thinking about it can look up for more information then, and of course contact you if they're interested. So just do a first test and go through your first interview, and you never know.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead now and take a break. When we come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.